Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. So earlier in the week, we heard that Deshaun Watson re-injured that Achilles that he tore. Today we find out it is significant. After further testing, it was revealed that he had actually torn it again. He had surgery to repair it Thursday, which was yesterday, less than 3 months after the original tear happens again. Watson faces a much longer road back, and now it is possible, quite possible, that he could miss all of 2025. Regarding the injury to Watson's Achilles, we've been asked by a number of people. Jason from Over the Cap, so those are the salary cap guys. What the collective bargaining says is if the Achilles injury occurred under normal rehab directed by the team, his contract, meaning the guarantees, would be still protected. If the injury was the result of something he was not supposed to be doing, his guarantees would be at risk either now or in the future. Again, that from Over the Cap. We had a couple of emails, voicemails about that. Let's welcome in G. Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, also the barbershop. And G. Bush, man, there is nothing minor about an Achilles injury. When you do it twice, it's a long way back.
Man, you hate to speculate on people's careers because unfortunately, I've been in those places before, and I've been around a lot of athletes who have had Achilles injuries. I partially tore mine about, I want to say 2 years ago. My father tore his. I've been around a lot of people, and we talked about it a little bit before we got on air here. Is this isn't the first one. So he tore an Achilles heel a little under 3 months after he had already had it surgically repaired. And the thing about those tendons is they're stitching those. That's a very difficult place to get blood flow at. It's a very difficult thing to get healed. Take a look at some basketball players like Kevin Durant and how long he missed. Take a look at guys like that want to come back, like Kirk Cousins, who you look like a shell of himself. I mean, you lose a lot of your thrust. You lose a lot of your explosiveness. You lose a lot of your mobility. And for him, this isn't the first injury. I mean, he's torn the ACL, I believe, either in high school or college at Clemson or coming into college. He's torn his ACL with the Texans. He had the shoulder injury with the Cleveland Browns, which, a lot of people say, well, his arm didn't look the same after that injury. And now you have 2 Achilles heels injuries. So, I mean, what made Deshaun Watson great was the aspect of the game where he was able to extend plays, get out of traffic, move around, and be mobile. That part of his game is gone. You talk about he never had a really, I would say, a rocket for an arm, but he had a really good arm, good touch on the deep ball. That looks like it's gone. And when you miss this much time, and you missed time with the year you took off with the Texans, you missed almost a half a year because of the suspension. You got injured all of last year and then most of this year as well. Your processing isn't going to be the same. You're not around the game of football. You're not out there consistently sharpening your tools, working your mind, working on the placement of the football and what people are trying to do, diagnosing defenses. And because you're not there right now and you're still working on rehabbing, the processing is gone. It's unfortunate to say this because you don't want to say about anybody's career, but when you have these type of injuries, it's unfortunately that this could be types of career-ending injuries. That could be the beginning of the end, not only just in Cleveland, but just in your career as a quarterback. And another thing that starts to happen is when you start to have surgeries back to back to back. I've had 17 surgeries in my lifetime due to football, right? And one thing that starts to happen is it wears on you mentally. You just don't want to fight anymore. You're fighting a rehab to get to a point, and you ask yourself, is this what this is? I played a game to play football, not to rehab injuries. And so you just think, when you have that much money, when he's made the amount of money he has in his career, it gets to a point where it's easier to just hang it up and figure out, hey, what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, other than trying to come back from these type of catastrophic injuries.
Yeah, and so, again, we'll see what happens. Andrew Berry was on the Bark Tank, Cleveland Browns YouTube, talking about the new hire, Mike Bloomgren, offensive line coach, who was former head coach at Rice.
We think Mike is a fantastic O-line coach, run game and pass game. Mike, he actually started his career under Bill Callahan with the Jets as a QC. Went to Stanford, was David Shaw's one of his very first hires. Implemented a lot of new things, both from a protection standpoint and a run game standpoint in Palo Alto with those great teams. One of the few O-line coaches who's parlayed that into a head coaching position, which he did at Rice. Made them bowl eligible for the first time in forever. He's really smart, great relationship builder, high IQ in terms of technique and fundamentals, and we think he'll be able to make a huge impact both run and pass game.
G-Bush, again, I didn't know a lot about the guy. I like what I hear. You think about David Shaw, that's Christian McCaffrey, Bryce Love, that kind of run game. So they needed some work. They need some work on the offensive line. They regressed last year.
Yeah. And I'm going to just be clear. And I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because, I got on the Browns for, hiring guys. I think the run game coordinator was from Connecticut last year. And I talked about how I didn't like a guy coming from Bill Callahan to not have NFL experience. Now, Bloomgren has some NFL experience, as Andrew Berry just pointed to, in coming up under Callahan as a quality control type guy. Look, listen, I don't know if this is going to be a home run. I know for a fact that I like the fact that he's a motivator. He's a fiery individual. And if Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry to be laid back guys, I think that they need assistants around him to be those guys that are football in your face, tell it like it is, getting guys together type coaches. You need those. It can't be a situation where it's Camp Cupcake or guys thinking that this is a resort. To me, if Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are coming back, I'm looking at it as a situation where, look, I need them to take a hold of the conversation, and then they need to stand and prove and be the face of whatever it is. They got brought back. They need to fix it. They need to get the offensive coordinator. They need to get the offensive line together. They need to get the special teams together. So for me, the thing that I'm waiting to see is, they could bring anybody in. I'm waiting to see what they're going to do with that. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that those guys brought in the right people. But at this point, I just want to see it. I want to see it. I want them to control the room, because at the end of this year, I'm not going to be sitting here talking next year, if the Browns are bad, about which assistant didn't get it done. It's going to fall on Kevin Stefanski. It's going to fall on him. You are the face of this thing. You're the face of it. We've got rid of quarterbacks. We've got rid of offensive coordinators and Dorsey and line coaches and all this other stuff. What I want you to do is I want them to put a stamp on what it is that they want to do offensive-wise, their coaching staff, and then live with them results, because there's no more passing the buck this year.
Yeah, no, there can't be. They're on the clock, both of them. Andrew Berry's on the clock too. This draft, this draft. I mean, you gotta get an infusion of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball in this draft. I couldn't agree with you more. Andrew Berry talked about how to fix what went wrong in 2024. Same, the Bark Tank from the Browns.
Unfortunately, in professional sports, sometimes these years do happen. You'd like to think that your team will perform up to expectations, be young and in its prime, in perpetuity, and that's not the reality of professional sports. But for us not to be able to stop the fall or stop the bleeding, so to speak, over the course of the year, that's a major problem. And it starts by, hard, self-analysis with, the roster and really everything that we did to prepare the team, and then ultimately make the necessary adjustments, which it's not just players, it's not just coaches, not just support staff. It's, auditing everything we do from a process standpoint. And adjust those when the results haven't been satisfactory. And that doesn't mean that we don't have a number of good things in place in those areas. and also, making sure that we're not letting the emotion of the season, kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater. But, it would be naive for us not to look at this year and say, hey, this went, really, really wrong. And, we need to change our approach in some areas to correct it.
Again, I think they need to be more physical in practice. I think the training camp needs to be more physical, and the players need to play in the preseason. The last couple of years, you've had a lot of injuries, and you haven't played the guys and haven't been ready to start once the season starts.
Yeah. Listen, I think they try to give guys the benefit of the doubt here a little bit. They tried to say, hey, you guys are veterans. You know your body. We're going to get you. We're going to do you a solid, get you to the season. But what they didn't realize was, that ain't the way it worked. You got to put your body through something to get it ready to get to the season. We look at guys like Jed Wills, who you got to think about it. For some people in life in general, consequences are the motivation, right? For some people, success is a motivation. They get a taste of success and they say, I don't never want to go back to losing. But for some people, they have to be fearful of their livelihoods. And so if you don't have that aspect, you got to have a spectrum of motivating tools for certain people. Some is, hey, I want to get to my next contract. Some people is, hey, I need to be a number one receiver or a number one guy starting in this league. Some people just want a couple extra checks at the end of their career. But your job as a coach and an evaluator is to figure out which one of those guys these people are and to make sure that I'm pushing the right buttons. And for when you get guys like Jed Wills who are saying it's a business decision, and never came back and looked like he was even motivated to play. When you got guys like Amari Cooper, for generally speaking, Amari Cooper's been never said anything. When he starts talking at other places in Buffalo about how it's completely different here, and Zadarius Smith is basically jumping and kicking, ready to leave up out of here, you have to say to yourself, well, where did we go wrong? And I'll give Andrew Berry credit for that, because he did say the thing that I think he hit the nail on the head. You can have bad seasons, but 3 and something, that tells me more about your infrastructure and what you're doing as an organization. Well, now we're talking about culture when you talk about 3 wins. 7, 8, I could see maybe 6 in a really bad year, but when you start dipping to 3 with the number 2 overall pick, you got some stuff to figure out in your process.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree with you. He hit the nail on the head. They couldn't stop it. Kevin Stefanski was always really good at, okay, you haven't had a 3-game losing streak. They just kept losing this year, and to your point, you can't have that. Also came out today that the Browns are going to play a game in London next year. So the Browns and the Jets will be playing one of the international games. As we take a look at that, they'll be playing at Tottenham Hotspur. They actually will be the home team against the Jets. The Jaguars will also be there. They'll be at Wembley. So Browns headed back for one of the international games. That's fine. You eventually are going to have to go either to there or Brazil or Germany. So you play the Jets in London.
I guess. I mean, it's a 9 o'clock game or something. I remember back when I think Deshaun Kaiser they played the Vikings in like 18 or something like that. And, it's a nice little thing. It's a novelty thing when you do it. I'm all for the pageantry and stuff. And at one point in time, I even thought that I would like to get a team in London. That would be kind of cool. Here's the problem for the Browns. Yeah, I looked at the schedule and I'm like, is this a last place schedule? Because the teams on that schedule, I'm like, see, you got the Vikings and the 49ers. Like, you still got I'm like, man, this don't look like the last place schedule that I thought we should get. But the Browns are the fact that you're losing one of your home games where you think that you would have some sort of advantage, especially when you're talking about it. I'm just glad it's not a division game. Games like Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, I want no parts of that. We need to have a home game for those games. And I'm glad that if you do get the Jets, you got a team that you can deal with. Like, that's a game that's a winnable game on the road. But you would like to, obviously, if you're a good team, you want that game. You want that game at home because it gives you an opportunity. But look, I don't have a problem with it. The Cleveland Browns have a lot bigger fish to fry about. I'm more interested in not who they playing over there. I'm more interested in who the quarterback going to be when they show up in London.
Yeah, I'm with you. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back.
Ted.
Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio Lotteries Home for the Holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
We continue talking Browns with Garrett Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and the Barber Shop. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. I watched the Penn State Notre Dame last night, and I am convinced that we should not move off number 2 and we should draft Abdul Carter. Can you imagine the havoc him and Myles Garrett being on the same defensive line? Plus, we have a lot of good depth with Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright coming back off the injury. I just think we stay at number 2 and take Abdul Carter and not get complicated, not get cute. Just wondering what your thoughts were. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, I watched that too. He was playing with a banged-up shoulder and kind of dominated. I've seen comps of Micah Parsons and Von Miller. I haven't seen enough of them to know. But I know you put him opposite Myles Garrett and you can get after it. I think you can probably, and it's not getting cute, you can probably trade back to 3 or 4 with somebody that wants one of those quarterbacks if you determine they aren't a franchise guy and still get Abdul Carter or somebody of that ilk.
Oh, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. Because if the trade back scenario that I like the most does involve Abdul Carter, because what I would do is I go into the draft and I'd say, let me identify 4 blue chip athletes, right? Everybody has or just say a big 3 blue chip guys, those ones that you can't miss. I say, I want to come out about this draft with at least one of those at the number wherever I pick in the first round. So if I decide, all right, I like Abdul Carter, I like Travis Hunter, and another blue chip guy is Genty, right? I'm not going to draft Genty in the top 10 as a running back. So that's fine. I'm not going to do that. So then it comes down to Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. So now what I go to is I tell the New York Giants, hey, y'all won that football game by mistake. Y'all shouldn't have done that. But what we can help you out with, buddy, is we can help you get to number 2 and get the quarterback you want, because the Raiders over there, I believe it's, they're at 6 or something, and the Saints at 9. I think they may be looking to jump up here and grab Shedeur Sanders. So I think Cam Ward to go number 1 overall. But if you want to get him, we'll gladly do that. We'll swap those picks. Let me get a 2 this year. Can we get a second round pick? And how about a 3rd? No 3rd. Well, let's do a 2 and a 4. We get that together, and I'll take a second round pick to move up a spot. I don't know if the draft chart really alludes to that, but the further I go down, if I got to trade back to 9, if I got to trade back to 6, Abdul Carter might not be there. Travis Hunter might not be there. So I don't want to get too far outside of the framework where I could get one player. So I think it's very plausible that you could trade back one position, grab some extra draft capital, and get a guy that you thought you wanted to come out of the draft with a blue chip athlete. And I like Abdul Carter. I like him a lot. Here's what I will say with this, though. The thing that we all have to realize is, one, we just talked about last segment, that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are on the clock. So if there is a quarterback that they deem is going to help them, then they got to take him. It just is what it is, because they're not going to have another opportunity to do that. If the Browns are drafted in the top, people say, well, next year, Arch Manning. No. That's not the way it works, boys and girls. You need to stop doing that, because it don't work that way. Next year, if Arch Manning is that guy, I don't care how many number 1 picks the Browns got. Did anybody trade the number 1 picks for Andrew Luck? No, the Colts stood right. Actually, they got rid of Peyton Manning for Andrew Luck. If a number one bona fide consensus quarterback is there, it don't matter how you think you're going to get them. You're not getting them unless you have the number one overall pick. Two, we don't know what's going to happen next year. And three, if the Browns are picking in the top three next year, Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry won't be taking that pick anyway. Nope. So, yeah.
They'll be watching it like us. So here you go. This is Jordan Reed, who is another draft analyst for ESPN, his mock draft. And you kind of alluded to it. He has the Titans going number 1 with Cam Ward. He has the Browns taking Shedeur Sanders number 2, Travis Hunter going 3. I would caution, and this is something that I showed a couple days ago, and I'm going to show it again. Deion Sanders tweeted this out in March 2018 relative to the Browns having the first pick. It turned out to be Baker Mayfield. Love what the Browns have done this offseason, but if I am a young quarterback, ain't no way I'm going to Cleveland. I would pull an Eli Manning if possible. Hashtag think about that. Hashtag truth. And if he's saying that about another quarterback, G. Bush, what do you think he's saying about his son?
Well, I've always, look, I think, and people always, I was the first one to jump off the porch with it. I said, oh, come on, man. You know, Coach my man, let Shedeur come over here. What are you talking about? Listen, I pointed to what he said when Deshaun Watson got booed. Like, he was very vocal about how he felt like that was not a classy move. Like, and here's the reality of the situation. And like, we can all, listen, let's just all be, just be 100% about this. Playing quarterback for the Cleveland Browns ain't easy. I've talked to Tim Couch about it. He got booed. I've talked to Deshaun Watson. Baker Mayfield. There's a lot of people here that have tried to put that jersey on. It's like the Lord of the Rings. It's like everybody has tried to fill that mantle, and it's very difficult to play here. And to be honest, we don't like a lot of extra. We like you to throw touchdowns and be Nick Chubb, hand the ball to the ref. We don't like watches. We don't like you going on vacations. We don't like your dad saying nothing. This is what we like here. That's what we like. We like hand the ball back and go back to the huddle, right? Unfortunately, this is a new day and age. This is a new wave. And you got to ask yourself, coming after Deshaun Watson, and then coming after Baker Mayfield, and then coming after Johnny Manziel, at what point are we kind of scorned? And at what point are we kind of tainted a little bit? Because we automatically got our antennas up right now. Like, you better not, don't you dare. I remember the last time somebody did something like this. We're kind of like that a little bit, man. No, we got to go to counseling a little bit.
Yeah, we are. But again, you know, when you say Eli Manning, that means I'm going to dictate that I'm not going to this team. And it worked for him. He knew how to do it. And I'm guaranteeing you, if Deion wants to orchestrate that, he'll figure out a way to make that work.
Closed doors, especially to get them to New York. Yep. They might have already been talking to them. Hey, listen, we're going to do this. This is what the picks we got for you. You ain't even got to worry about it.
Yep. All right. Before I let you go, some good news. Myles Garrett voted AP First Team All-Pro. Selection marks 4th time in his 8-year career that Garrett has been chosen as a First Team All-Pro. Only Brown on that list. Denzel Ward had 4 first-round votes, first-team votes. Missed making the selection by a couple of votes. So the only one for the Browns, Myles Garrett. He deserved it. Season he had and the season Denzel had got lost in 3 wins.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, you know, on face value, could have been another Defensive Player of the Year type award year for him. Basically the same stats when he won it last year. And I'll give him credit. Myles Garrett has been under a lot of pain this whole year. He's been banged up. He's been injured since pretty much week 1. And he could have folded the 10 up and went home. He didn't. You know what he did? He stayed out there. He fought with his dudes. He put it all on film, put it all on tape. And here's what I'm expecting. Here's one of the things that we understand and we get to a point. Myles Garrett is not a player that you can trade and just come back from. And and listen, and at some point in time, I would like my Cleveland Browns to get to this. Under no way ask yourself this question: is T.J. Watt ever putting another uniform on? No. Is Hayward ever putting another uniform on? No. Lamar Jackson is never putting another uniform on. So I would like to get to a point where we can get to a place where we have the culture in place that we're able to say, oh, don't worry about it, Myles. We're going to have consistently a culture that's going to put winning out there, and you're going to retire as a Cleveland Brown. Now, look, the culture may not be there, but I listened to what Andrew Berry's saying, because I think we're going to have a conversation about this. Don't be surprised if the Cleveland Browns roll out a big-time contract extension for Myles Garrett. And don't be surprised if there's some guaranteed dollars in there. Because there's one way to make sure someone knows that you are affectionate about them. You can tell them I'm affectionate, or you can show them I'm affectionate. And then there's another way. You can also just pay them. And then that really shows you're affectionate. And I like to pay way.
All right. Before I let you go, Barbershop has a new home. Tell us about that.
Yes, man. Barbershop, shout out to 92.3 The Fan. We had a great run over there. Still on 92.3 The Fan. So make sure you check me out. I'll be filling in the mornings and some of the other shows as well. But the Barbershop is returning 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on YouTube. You can find it on the Barbershop. You search Garrett Bush. It will also be streaming live on the UCSS YouTube channel. And by the way, we're going to do it real big. It'll be live on Twitter. It'll be live on Facebook. It will be live on YouTube. It'll be live on all those platforms simultaneously, 9 a.m. to 11. And that's going to start the first week of February, the first Saturday in February. The Barbershop will be returning. Same format, same style. Make sure you check that out. Follow me on Twitter at gbush91. Just search Garrett Bush on YouTube and you can get the Barbershop show.
All right. Sounds good. Appreciate you, man. Have a good one. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you.
G. Bush, make sure you check him out. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 11 to 1 on Monday through Friday. And as you know, the Barbershop coming to YouTube first week of February. We're stepside. Take a quick time out. Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, this is Tom, a 60-year Browns fan living in Florida. I think they should sign Kirk Cousins, let him start, and draft Cam Ward, and have Kirk Cousins show him the ropes. We definitely need a quarterback immediately, a proven quarterback, and give somebody else the backup shot. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jake, I don't mind the idea. There's an assumption that whomever is drafting one right now, the Titans, they'll have the first crack at Cam Ward. So it'll be interesting to see. Kirk Cousins, my only question with him is he healthy? He did not look, coming off an Achilles, he's like 37, 38, something in that range. He didn't look completely over the Achilles. In the games that I saw him play, you could tell it was a little slow and favoring his injured leg a little.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it has messed with his foot, obviously, and then there's a dive off the foot simultaneously is another issue that he's dealing with there. So could Kirk operate what Kevin likes to operate? I think so. The level to which people would presume it would not be what it used to be in Minnesota. But I think when the Browns are just trying to scrape through a season, these are the types of names that you're going to be working through. I don't think you're going to find could there be a world where you take a shot on somebody like in the similar market of Sam Darnold? Maybe, possibly, but you're probably searching the veteran collective and then trying to find some sort of like lotto ticket for a year is probably the best course. They could certainly draft Cam Ward. They could certainly draft Shedeur Sanders. There's merit, I think, to both of those guys, but it's also, I think a lot of what will happen to make that decision is behind closed doors, where like you're seeing how they are watching film, their football IQ, their um, leadership traits, their how driven they are at the position. That's stuff that you can only really come to understand about them from interviewing people close to them, teammates, coaches, all the above, and getting them in front of the whiteboard and having them talk through things. Those are things we don't get to know from the outside looking in. There's certainly parts of their game to doubt too, but the Browns need to bring in a couple quarterbacks. There's like several pathways to what they could do. They could take a bit of a flyer on a guy, a younger guy. They can make a potentially a trade for a younger guy that they think has a chance to be something for them. But I mean, the thing that I think to understand here is the pathway to the Browns having a top 12 quarterback next year is pretty slim. But they're also trying to climb out of being a bottom of the worst quarterback situation again next year. So there's like a range there, right? If they can get inside the top 20 of quarterback production and play, then you certainly can find a pathway to winning enough ball games to make yourself relevant. It's just a matter of, what are Browns fans' expectations, relevancy or chasing Super Bowls? And that's, with the money they've invested in the roster, I think you're trying to chase Super Bowls. So I think that's where there's a delicate balance of how much they're going to invest. Are they going to draft a guy right now? And also, there's just a lot of time. There's like 3 months here to see some guys' contract situations sort out, who's happy or unhappy. And it feels like almost every year there's a quarterback that kind of is fringe on the market that could be had in a trade. Not the top end guys. We know how rare the top end guys are to ever find that ability, but there's these little slivers of opportunity that'll be there for some of them that I think we're maybe not even privy to right now. But yeah, I think the way to look at it is two guys for sure. You would prefer somebody who's played in the NFL a little bit, maybe either that's a veteran or somebody, like we said, who's maybe been overlooked or deserves a chance to compete for a job. Think like Malik Willis in Green Bay, maybe, who's had a nice little run. Over there when he went into Matt LaFleur's offense and looked a little more competent, right, coming out of the situation in Tennessee, or Justin Fields, those type of guys, then kind of pairing them with some younger upside player too. So it's an interesting spot to be in. I wish there was just more clarity this offseason, but the draft has not left us with many situation that make us feel kind of warm and fuzzy about, like, oh, it's Drake May's there. You're gonna have one of Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels. And it's just not that type of draft to feel, not that there weren't concerns about Drake or Jaden or those guys either, but like there was just a better consensus around those two are worth the pick there and everything that kind of came with that. So I am fascinated by what they're going to do because the pathway, the end of the tunnel isn't bright yet. I think there's a lot of road to travel here.
I know you also did a breakdown and took a look at a lot of what Mike Bloomgren, the new offensive line coach, has done. Now, he was part of Bill Callahan's staff, actually Brian Schottenheimer's staff with Bill Callahan with the Jets. What did you see? What are the Browns getting in Bloomgren?
Yeah, he's an interesting road he traveled. So he kind of cut his teeth in the NFL with Florida State, or sorry, at the college level with Florida State as a undergrad assistant, and then got a chance after he graduated from Florida State to go work at Alabama as a grad transfer. So he does that for 2 years, gets some lower level offensive coordinator jobs and offensive line coaching parallel jobs at the same time, and then gets a really big opportunity after doing that through 2007 to go up to the Jets. He gets an interview to go up there. He actually talked to us about some of this on a podcast. I did some real research over the course of the evening that they had brought him in, and he talked about how he interviewed the Jets. That was 12-hour interview, really long. He got this shot in the dark opportunity, a recommendation that got sent up there to New York, and they got him in. And like those were real. I mean, that when he got there, it was Mangini. Obviously, Callahan was on staff, Brian Dable, the guys who we all know. And so he gets offered that job, $45K at the time, 2007, but no insurance. So he turned it down And because he had a family, he just started a family, he's like, can't do without insurance. They called him back 2 hours later and said, okay, we'll do insurance. But it's funny because who knows where his coaching career goes if he doesn't take that Jets job. So he goes there. He's a quality control guy on offense, then becomes an assistant, basically an assistant to the coordinator on offense, and does a really nice job with him. When again, everything you gather work hand in hand with Bill Callahan to develop offensive line play with there. He's kind of soaking all that in, getting better at that. Then he gets an opportunity as Jim Harbaugh leaves Stanford to go out and work with David Shaw, and Shaw brings him in as the OC. So he is like taking a bunch of his teachings, his philosophies. He's going to run the O-line out there, very physical brand. And he establishes that from 11 through 17. Those were really good Stanford teams, like really good running the football, diverse, gap, counter, power, all of the different variations of zone runs, and like a couple Heisman Trophy finalists there, and Christian McCaffrey and Bryce Love, and everything that they would establish there, he carried on in a really meaningful way. And I think they become one of the more run grading teams through his time. And pass protection was redesigned because he got there with the Andrew Luck situation was happening. And those were, like I said, those were really good teams. And he was a massive contributor to them because Derek Mason took the Vanderbilt job in 2013, and Shaw hired him to be the OC right away. Internal hire, quick, loved him. He was his right-hand man. I mean, those two were running Stanford together, and especially offensively. And then he gets an opportunity. I mean, during that time, plenty of teams in the NFL with a raise would have been more money, because Stanford had good football teams, but they weren't really the more lucrative sports side of things. Like they weren't, their fiscal side of their sports stuff is not one of the more well-paying opportunities out there. But NFL teams were offering more money, O-line jobs. He didn't want to take it because he wanted to be a head coach, and then goes to Rice. He gets an opportunity at Rice, which is another strong, prestigious academic school, if you know that, kind of in the Northwestern Duke and obviously Stanford type of mold. It's very hard to win at Rice. And but he took that opportunity because offensive line coaches don't really get head coaching opportunities that often. So he takes it, and there's some good moments there. There's some a couple straight seasons of bowl games, which hadn't happened to that program in a while, but relatively inconsistent play. And it ultimately leads to him getting let go this past year. But I really do believe like he is a very smart, sound offensive line coach. If you talk to people, if you talk to people or listen to what people said when Stanford kind of fell apart, because Stanford had a good 18, but then 19, the COVID season was okay, but then like 19, 21, 22, they really into 23 regressed and fell apart and lost the identity of who they are. And a lot of people attribute that to the departure of Bloomgren. So I think he's one of the more respected offensive line coaches out there in a technical, a teaching standpoint. And I think he's a diverse run game guy. He can do whatever your team is interested in, and he's done it in a variety of ways. I think he's gotten more experience with RPOs and different variations of motion based on his Rice film that I watched a little bit of last year. They're doing a lot of that stuff. So great teacher at the position, good pass protection guy. He'll bring a lot of similar theories to pass protection technique, run game technique that Callahan already had, because that's where he cut his teeth coaching offensive line and really getting into the nitty gritty details of it. And it's just a reversion back to that type of guy. I think like Andy Dickerson, by all accounts, a really good guy. I think he was a Shane Waldron guy. Like those two, him and Shane Waldron, who was in LA for a long time. Both of them were in LA for a long time. They played together small school college football together at Tufts University. And if you look at it, Waldron has kind of carried him everywhere he's went, because Waldron then went to Seattle and goes to Seattle and gives him a chance to become like the run game coordinator, then the offensive line. And I think like Dickerson getting away from Waldron and Waldron's way of thinking about football left him with a lack of creativity, like to like apply. I don't think he was able to apply things he knew to what the Browns are trying to do. And I think that he lost a voice in that room. And then if you hear Joel Bitonio talk about it, like it was a bit more of Dickerson, it was a bit more like groupthink and, the collective coming up with plans together, where they just felt they needed like direct coaching, direct teaching, stern leadership. They're all veterans in that room, man, for the most part. It's like they need a voice they respect. They need a voice that can give them direct instruction, direct plans. And I think that that's a reversion back to some form of what Callahan had success with here. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back.
Ted. Hi, Betty.
Oh no, you wrapped yourself into a daze.
Holidays.
You need a break, so I got you Ohio Lotteries home for the holidays and Merry Money Scratch-Offs.
You could win up to $500,000 or $1 million. Oh, thanks, hon.
And they have games on the back. Has anybody seen my glasses?
We continue talking Browns with Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I really do love Tommy Rees as a candidate. I remember in an interview in his only season at Bama, he said he's not trying to overhaul a scheme. His focus is what does the offense do well and how can we, referring to his staff, maximize it. And he emphasized physicality, which is what we really need back. We need our physicality back. And he also emphasized a lot of the modern day up-tempo, sugar huddle concepts. It's not necessarily with the spread, but more so with the downhill running attack, which I really, really like. And I feel like it's really, really unique and creative. And I think we could use something like that. And he's also very creative, but with the old school mentality. And I feel like we need that. And I feel like he can take the Kubiak-Stefanski offense to another level.
And again, that's Tommy Rees, who the Browns have interviewed as an offensive coordinator. The Browns will interview Falcons tight end coach Kevin Cougar from Toledo. He was with the Chargers as a tight end coach before landing with the Falcons. Also, Seahawks quarterback coach Charles London will be interviewed today. So, Jake, when you look at that, Kubiak's a guy that's on that list, Clint Kubiak potentially. Just your thoughts on the offensive coordinator. And we'll get into, I know you've done you wrote a whole article about kind of remaking Kevin Stefanski's offense. We'll get into that right after this. But thoughts on the OCs that we've heard the Browns are looking at?
It's tough. It's hard to know what interviews are serious and what aren't, and if they already have their mind made up. I do think they're serious about Tommy Rees. I think that the two names that sit at the top, because I've also heard like Darrell Bevel's name is mentioned too. If it's not Rees or Kubiak, I would be kind of surprised. I think that there's a belief when the Browns let go of Drew Petzing to let him go to Arizona that they didn't do enough to retain him and do what they could to keep his way of approaching the offense around. And Petzing has had some offseason interviews here for head coaching jobs. I don't think he'll get one quite yet, but he's doing a nice job. And there's a similar feeling around the idea that they like Tommy Rees in a very similar way. You know, they kind of threw that pass game specialist label on his resume this year to kind of make it a little harder for somebody else to maybe make him a quarterback's coach there or something else. So I think they like him. It's a matter of if they think his philosophy to offense and understanding of the style that they're going to revert to is conducive for successful overall operation. So he's not rooted. He didn't come up in this sort of system the same way Kevin did, the same way I think you will look at Bloomgren in that same mold. He didn't like arrive in that style, but that's not to say a guy can't adapt and apply some of his ways of thinking about football, through his OC days into the fold too. So, really what I'm looking for here is, I think there's a chance for Clint Kubiak to call plays somewhere still. I don't know if Kevin, I know he obviously relinquished that role to Ken Dorsey here at the end of the season, but I don't know if Kevin wants to do that again. I think he'd prefer, if this is going to be his ship to float or sink, that he's the one who does it. Does that mean he can't get somebody like Kubiak? That's where things we kind of don't know behind the scenes. Where would Tommy Rees be willing to come into the fold and maybe not call plays, but have that label? I'm not sure, but I feel like those two are at the front of the ship here, and it's just kind of a matter of like what route Kevin wants to go with responsibility and what some guys are comfortable with. But I also would really like them to hire a dedicated quarterbacks coach. They have not done that in a while. Somebody who's not even the coordinator, he's just the quarterback coach. I would really prefer to have somebody specifically hyper focused on that room. So that's kind of where I am. The thing I would like more than anything, because I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, and Tommy and Kubiak obviously check box here, but I just want somebody who's called, develop their own offense. Like there's just a world here, and even if they're not calling plays in Cleveland, the necessity to coordinate an offense, what it takes is unique in both preparation and application on game days. And I think having done that at some level and some variety really does make you a better comprehensive coach for that side of the football. Really down to the detail what all 11 guys are doing, what they're thinking, how it all comes together. I just would be apprehensive. Not that it couldn't work, but I would be apprehensive about bringing in somebody who doesn't have that experience, given the criteria that we're looking for here. So, a couple guys, like I said, they already have that ability or already have accomplished those things. So, we'll see if they go that route. But I think that element of it is like you just think about football in a different way when you're putting all the positions and all the schematic operations under one umbrella, and you're the one in charge of it. So yeah, I find myself leaning in that direction. But one thing you know about the NFL, man, is you can never guarantee anything one direction or the other. You can make a great hire, perceived great hire that doesn't work out, and you can hire somebody who nobody wanted. Can't believe they hired this guy, and all of a sudden he's the hottest coordinator name in the next coaching search market. So yeah, it's a bit capricious, but I do feel like as far as moving the needle with the off season stuff, I think that's a place that I would be very interested in trying to figure out somebody who's at least done it at some level.
So I know you wrote an article for BrownsFilmBreakdown.com modernizing Kevin Stefanski's offense, what it looks like based on which teams are kind of running it best. So you came up with kind of four things. First was fix the under the center run game with zone baseline and gap inclusion. So take us through that and take us through the other three as well.
Yeah, no, they're not far off. This is not a world they haven't lived in, so it's not. Some of this isn't rocket science, but like I thought the thing that they needed to do more than anything last year was modernizing what they do offense. I didn't think they needed to rewrite who they were. I didn't think they needed to tailor their structure, their scheme to one person. I just thought they needed to modernize. They didn't do that. They went in a different direction. They went toward chasing everything they thought was conducive for Deshaun Watson. But I think that like a part of my theory here is that in the process of chasing improvements from the quarterback, they lost the soul and identity of who they are offensively, what they lean into, what their base is, what their guys can run with their eyes closed, right? They're just so used to it. So uh, I would say the first is, yeah, they need to get back to running under center stuff and like having an under center run game that makes people respect it, because you can't chase downfield explosive plays that mirror run and pass unless you're able to run the football somewhat. I think there's really good data out there that says you don't have to run it efficiently to have effective play action, but it definitely helps. And like you're watching Hard Knocks and you could see Mike Tomlin talk about when the Browns got under center, there's like no fear of it. They're like, we're going to eat them up when they get under center. The Browns lost the physicality. And a little bit of it is like when you become an RPO heavy team, you get a little passive in your run blocking. You don't really displace or move people because you're really worried about the 1 yard halo rule. So you don't drive downfield. You're more body position. Think of it as playing like playing pick and roll kind of basketball, where you're kind of just shielding a guy from going one direction. The Browns got good at it, but the problem is that you can't really develop downfield passing off of an RPO based offense, because there's just only so far guys can get downfield and making those reads without your offensive line meandering into illegal man downfield territory. So I just think they lost some of the backbone of who they are from a physical standpoint. So I think getting back to being a wide zone based team with a lot of wrinkles off of it, and then obviously they still have two pretty talented guards. They can get into more, back into their counter power stuff, which they did. They did do some gap scheme stuff this year still, but I think they need to be able to do it better and more cohesively from under center, because it's just such a great under center play action variation. And again, when Kevin was hired, his whole thing was like, we lean into heavier personnel, which is another thing. I think the second or third thing I talked about, they need to get back into having meaningful second and third tight ends on the roster that can do a little bit of both in terms of run and pass concepts, right? And then I think a fullback would be good if they can find it and fit it in, like a fullback again, who can be an interesting part of your run game diversity and then be able to sneak out and catch the football here and there, is also a thing I would be leaning into if I were them. The good teams running the football this year were using fullbacks as inserts in run game quite often. I think the Browns could benefit getting back into that world. And like I said, with Kevin's, arriving philosophy of like, we're going to be a team that is diverse and heavier personnel packages, and we're going to marry our run looks with our pass looks. And I just think they've gotten away from that as they've gotten into more of a world with Deshaun Watson as the focal point of what they're trying to do to find success. So the third thing I talked about in that is like they need to be more diverse in their alignment, formation wise, bunch sets, close to the line of scrimmage, putting themselves in those formations that give them the ability to get across the field quicker, that give them the ability to switch and change releases from the snap, that give defenses confusion on who to cover. And then they really need to have purposeful motion. If they don't have motion in this world, they're last in motion usage again this year. If you don't have motion, and creating ways to get guys out on routes quicker, to change who the number 1, 2, or 3 is on any given side, that changes the defense's rules and coverage. If you're not doing these things to create easy button opportunities for your offense to find yards and players schemed open, I know we were talking before the show about a guy who I think is doing really well with this right now at the college levels, Chip Kelly. Like the Ohio State is really good at using effective motion to create wrinkles to their concepts that create a burden, a mental burden on defenses to perform their run fit or their pass drop. And like, that's something the Browns have just not been good enough at. And maybe Tommy Rees is able to help with that, or whoever they hired OC is able to help with that, but they need to really work on how they put motion into being an effective part of what they do. Because again, so many teams are using it for an advantage in the league, and the best offenses are doing that. The Rams, the 49ers, the Dolphins, the Vikings, they're all using the Packers. They're so good with motion, making defenses think all the time. You have to make defenses think all the time. And if you're not making them think, you're making their life easier. So they've got to get better at that.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you. Tommy Rees might be the answer to that. He's a guy that's a little bit more aligned with that based on what he did in college, both at Alabama and at Notre Dame. Jake Burns, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jake.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Jake Burns, make sure you check him out, brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Always really good and in-depth stuff concerning Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Lance Reisland straight ahead with 3 keys for Ohio State to beat Texas. Film breakdown, video analysis straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Ohio State Buckeyes trying to grab that second spot in the national championship game for college football in a few hours. They'll play the Texas Longhorns. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Film breakdown, video analysis, 3 keys for the Buckeyes to beat the Longhorns coming up in a few hours. And Lance, Ohio State has looked really good in the college football playoffs. I don't think anybody would argue they've been the most dominant team in the games that have been the college football playoffs.
Well, yeah, and they're playing to their strengths. So they got away from, I'm not a big believer in that losses teach you lessons. That's just not my style. However, if you look at what happened against Michigan, they ran the ball 14 times directly at Grant and Graham, 2 guys who are going to be high draft picks, first rounders. Graham's going to be a top 5 guy probably. They got away from that. We're going to be tougher than you mentality. It doesn't mean they're not tough. It just means they have to do what they do, which is spread the ball out. Then they get those later boxes. They have to make sure they're always in a good play because they have playmakers all over the field. There's no sense in running into a bad look or throwing into a bad look when you have the talent they do at receiver, quarterback, and running back, as well as how well that defensive front 4 played in the first 2 weeks. Without question, they're the hottest team going into these last couple rounds. They're incredibly hot right now.
All right, so 3 keys to beating Texas for the Buckeyes. Number one, RPOs on first down gets them the best look. So take us through that and what we'll see here.
Well, two plays that are the same. You're going to see a flat screen. You're going to see the guard tackle pull, and you're going to see a guy in the flat. Now, this one, it's two running backs. So you got Junkins and Travion in the backfield. They get a look. They want man coverage, so they're running counter one way and then a flat screen. Then they do the same play. Now they're going to run counter up to the right, and now they're going to bring Smith. So it's the same play, but now they're going to bring Smith over in the flat. And what it does is it allows you to get into a good play. If he sees man coverage, which he did on these routes, you're obviously going to pull the ball and throw it to one of your talented guys. If you don't like the look or you get a light box, you can just hand the ball off on this counter, which they've run very, very well, especially these last 2 weeks. So I love this idea of getting into the best play on first down. Now, they also had a touchdown run because as you start to loosen up these defenses, you start to be able to create running lanes for these great backs. They're not like Michigan where they're going to run the ball against 8-man fronts and they don't care. That's not how they play. That's not how they're made. They have to do what they do, which has made them the best team, trying to get into this, be the second team to get into this playoff. They got to do what they do. This RPO on first down, take their top run play, attach it with a quick RPO, get it in the hands of these skilled players if the defense doesn't honor it.
The other thing that we see with those plays, they're getting the balls in the hands of their playmaker and a lot of space with blocking out front. So, again, the offense has been good, defense has been good. So, number two, 3 keys to beating Texas for the Buckeyes. Press the edge in the run game. Tell us what we see here.
So here you can see Texas, really good. They're in an odd front. They like to cover the center. There's 3 down linemen. Now, the problem is when you run the C gap, you're going to see this little safety has to cover. He has to first cover C gap, which is inside the receiver right there. Then he has to stay in D gap outside. That's too much. So as the play starts, you can see how Texas has everything balled in, but the edge is very weak. Now the running back, the kid out of Arizona State, just has to beat the corner. Travion Henderson and Junkins can both beat the Texas corners one-on-one. So again, the ability, Texas likes to load that front. They like to cover the center, cover the guards in that odd tight front, but they are really susceptible on the edge because this is just a safety at 190 pounds trying to set the edge. And when you try to set the edge with the receiver, you can see how soft it becomes. So that term you hear, setting the edge, Texas does not do a great job of setting the edge. This plays into perfect. Ohio State doesn't run it real well vertically anyway. Get to the edge, which is the strength. So their strength is also the weakness of Texas's defense. So look for the Buckeyes to run counter, outside zone, jet sweeps. Look them to try to get to the edge against this softer edge of the Texas Longhorns.
And you mentioned Scatabo, and really, the Buckeyes have a couple of guys in Henderson and Junkins that can do similar things to Scatabo, who kind of ate Texas's defense alive. Last one, in the 3 keys to beating Texas for Ohio State, get Ewers, that's Quinn Ewers, quarterback, off his spot. Take us through what we see
here.
You're
going to see this throws an interception from Georgia. Well, I want you to watch his feet when the plane freezes. So it freezes, and right when it freezes, you're going to see him on his back foot. So now, as you can see, he takes that hit. And what ends up happening is that Quinn Ewers does not have elite arm talent. What he has is the ability to process. But if he doesn't step into his throws and transfer his weight, you see the ball comes out, and it doesn't have a ton of zip on it. Now, what the Buckeyes have to do with Quinn Ewers, if you watch the games they lost, especially against Georgia, you're going to see Georgia bring double inside pressure here. The Buckeyes have to create inside pressure with their defensive tackles. Why? Because that'll get Quinn Ewers to move his feet in the pocket. He's not an incredible athlete, and he doesn't improvise very well. He likes to be on rhythm, meaning 1, 2, 3, balls out, or read the RPO, get the ball out. He's not a guy who's going to hold it. He's not a guy who's super scrambling. He's a guy that you got to get off his spot, and you got to get him to a second read and get him out of his rhythm. If you do that, he becomes very fundamentally unsound, and the Buckeyes will have an opportunity for some interceptions like Georgia did in both of their losses this year.
Well, the Buckeyes should know Quinn Ewers. It was a guy who was at Ohio State a few years ago before he went to Texas. Coming out of high school, was at Ohio State. When you look at Ewers, what do you see in terms of an NFL guy? Because he was really highly thought of, and then he's had a lot of plays where you just kind of scratch your head and go, that's not what you expect from an elite quarterback.
Well, the thing I've seen from him is that, like I said in that cut, that's what really shocked me watching a number of games, is that he does a really good job of processing information. He's very well coached. Sarkisian does a great job with their RPO schemes. Lots of movement, lots of motion, lots of NFL type stuff that they run. Lots of high-low, smash. They run lots of crossing routes. So the learning curve from the brain perspective will be very easy for Ewers, easy as it gets for a rookie. However, if he's not fundamentally sound, I do have some questions in terms of arm strength. Now, if he can get his fundamentals, where they need to be, he'll be fine. But we all know in the NFL, you have to make lots of throws off structure and off platform. And I'm not sure if he has the arm talent to do that. I'll be interested to see him when they do that, when they have those drills that they do at the combine and the pro days. But yeah, I can see where the questions come just because his inability to throw off platform, which is so necessary in the NFL.
Yeah, the receivers are a little faster, the DBs are a little faster, the game's just a little bit faster, and that means you get sped up a little bit as a quarterback. And if he's struggling with those things at the college level, there's going to be some questions whether he can handle the speed of the game.
Well, if you look at like Bryce Young, for example, he's really struggled now. He's having a good year this year because he's kind of played to his strengths now. So if you're not a guy with elite arm talent, you have to be super in your anticipation and super in your accuracy. Because if not, the guys in the NFL will close the gap, especially those corners. So he has to be really sure what he's seeing pre-snap. He has to continue that through post-snap. He has to make sure that he understands where he's going, and he's got to make sure he's on time. He's not Josh Allen where he can be late and then just throw a laser, out there because he's got such arm talent. There's guys in the NFL, Joe Montana, if you look back, there's guys in the NFL who have had tremendous success with not elite arm strength, with having elite anticipation and accuracy. That's what Ewers is going to have to be if he's going to be successful in the NFL.
All right, before I let you go, when you look at this, what do you think the key is? What are you watching early to decide Ohio State's doing what Ohio State fans want them to do, or if Texas does something not such a great thing for the Buckeyes?
Well, I think Texas is going to have to, even though it sounds kind of weird to have with those receivers, but I think Texas has got to make Ohio State one-dimensional. And I think that's got to be, you got to put the pressure on Will Howard. Now, he's done a great job, but you got to kind of pick your poison there because they've been so good on offense. So I think early on, are the Buckeyes, are they in run-pass options where they're in good looks, whether it's the run game? So if Texas comes out and Texas decides to play 8 deep because they want to cover the pass, can Ohio State run the ball against those massive D tackles of Texas? Texas is a team that can match the Buckeyes athletically. Not many teams can do that. If Texas is running the ball successfully, when they've been really good this year, they've run the ball. They did not run the ball well against Arizona State, and they did not run the ball in their 2 losses to Georgia. But if you look back to their round 1 game, they ran the ball great. So they have to make sure if Texas is running the ball, Ohio State is probably going to be in some trouble. And if Texas does not make Ohio State one-dimensional, Ohio State's balance, it's going to be a long night for the Longhorns.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland breaking down some film analysis, video breakdown of what the Buckeyes need to do to beat the Longhorns. Coming up tonight in just a few minutes. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here Monday at 4 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.